Welcome back to Von Bookenstein. I'm Ken Lammers, and today we're going to talk about the newest addition to the Dresden Files, Peace Talks. Um, so here's my thoughts. This will be the spoiler-free section. Very, very short. It's a mediocre book in the series that moves you from point A to point B, and basically that's it. 3 out of 5, right? If you're a major fan and you've been starved of Dresden for 5 years, it's been 5 years or plus since the last book, maybe a 3-5 because you're getting your fix. If you're somebody like me who says you've had 5 years, this better be a heck of a good book, maybe closer to 2.5 out of 5. And take that as a warning, Patrick Rothfuss. I expect amazing things out of your next book. Anyway, now we've gone through the spoiler-free section. Let me tell you right now, spoiler alert, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. The rest of this is going to be me talking about my impressions of this book. And I ain't going to worry about whether or not you've read it yet. So you've been warned. This book, as I understand it from watching videos that Jim Butcher's put out, is really half of a huge book that he wrote. And it must have been massively huge because this is, I think it was 344 was the number of pages for this, for Peace Talks. But Peace Talks and then the next book, which is going to come out, I think, in November, were supposed to be one book in their entirety. And turns it in, and his publisher and probably his agent and everybody went, whoa, 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 whoa. We got to cut this in half. First, because it's just way too large, and second, because we can make more money that way, right? Although I'm sure nobody will ever admit to that part of it. So the Dresden starved fans, me included, ran out and bought it. I mean, I've got both the audiobook and the book. Well, actually, it's a Kindle version of the book, but I've got both of them. And read the book and of listening through the audiobook. And good news, Marsden is still top notch in reading the book. He's just doing an amazing job. So we're good with that. But the book itself has a lot of flaws and some really serious, deep flaws. So right now, or at least since Changes, right, Butcher has kind of started moving to a different type of story. And he's trying to bring his characters into a more adult conflict growth. He's grown into something more than what he was in the first books. And rather than being somebody who's just kind of lost all the time and just stumbling through life early on, he's becoming a serious player, right? And realizes he's a serious player. He may have been a serious player before, but he didn't quite get it. Now he realizes he's a serious player, and he's trying to play his role more and more. And it's kind of moving away from the urban fantasy roots where it started, right? This is not where Jim Butcher started his series. It's not a Laurell K. Hamilton type book. I think he's trying to transform more into kind of a grand urban fantasy or a grand modern fantasy, however you want to put that, where it's not like, Monster of the Week type thing, which is what you saw a lot early on in Dresden with an overarching story, but Monster of the Week, in the first sets. And it isn't really going to be anymore the noir or slash urban fantasy thing. That's all been, we've played that. We've played him as the detective. Now he's becoming a serious power unto himself, right? And Butcher is kind of doing this, but it's in fits and starts. He's not getting parts of it right. I mean, there's the Butter problem. Butter was great when you're doing Monster of the Week, right? He's a great bit character. When you turn him into a Jedi Knight of the Sword, like I say, fits and starts. Some of it's turning out well, some of it's not. And he's recharacterizing people. Okay. One of the major flaws in this one is Ebenezer McCoy. I mean, he just destroys the character of Ebenezer McCoy. This is a man who is strong, steady, capable, somebody for whom Harry Dresden has a lot of respect because he deserves a lot of respect. Yes, we found out that, he's the Blackstaff and all that sort of thing. And that's kind of shaken a little bit the standard, what Harry thinks of him somewhat, because he's not totally morally upright. And we all, as we grow and, meet the adults who we idolize in our youth, we all go through these experiences some, right? You find out that they're flawed. In this one, McCoy just is absolutely nuts. Ape shit crazy nuts. And it's not rational. It doesn't fit the character as he was played before, was characterized before. It does not work. It's a flop. It fails, right? Hopefully, in the next half of this book, in November when we get the rest of it, that he'll be rehabilitated somehow, somewhat, right? I don't know. We also get some really just kind of bad things in here. Some which I think may be artifacts left over from when it was one giant book, when they cut off half of it. Some of the things in the first part aren't necessarily making sense. Like, they go and there's meetings with Butters and Knights of the Cross, but nothing happens. It's just interesting kind of filler stuff, the kind of stuff that an editor probably should have told him, you need to cut that out. This stuff about Butters is, I know you're semi-retconning him to make him work better. I mean, he's not really Butters anymore, but he's whatever Butters is now. And you're retconning how the sword works a little bit, that sort of stuff. I mean, it's not really retconning because it's more definitional, but it's still kind of, feels retconny. And, there's little bits like that in there, right? Where it doesn't really make sense in the story. It makes the story less tight. And I think that's because probably we're going to see the Butters and the Knights of the Cross be more important in the second part in the next book. But it wasn't needed in this one. Also, there's some things like, at the beginning, right? He's gone jogging with his brother Thomas, or running actually with his brother Thomas, and there's a point where they're getting ready to leave. He looks down, and there's big 3-foot long footprints going into the lake, into one of the Great Lakes, whichever one it is. It's next to Chicago, and that's it. We don't hear or see or know anything about that afterwards. This may be an artifact. It may come through somewhere in the second part of it. It may be something where we're supposed to think this is the Fomor. I don't think so, though. It didn't really fit anything else. And this is a problem. It's the whole, if you talk about the gun in the living room, the gun in the living room better have some purpose in the story, right? Well, he talks about the footprints, and they have no purpose in the story. At least not as we have it here. Another big flaw is the Murphy thing, right? Murphy's in bad shape. And it makes a point of telling us Murphy's in bad shape. And Murphy is, she's finished her first round of surgery. And she's supposed to be going into a second round of surgery. And after that, there's going to be a rehab period where she basically learns to walk like a normal person, not an athlete anymore, just a normal person. And she gets weaned off of the drugs that they've got her on because they are apparently using powerful narcotics to control her pain, right? In any event, she's in a cast. She's been in a cast for a while. She's, not really able to do things. And there's just, voila, at a certain point, Murphy decides to cut the cast off and become a fully functional person again. Fully functional. Now, mind you, she doesn't do a whole lot of running and jumping and all that, but you take the cast off of somebody who's been wearing one for a while, that leg ain't supporting much. They're limping around. They ain't doing much, right? She's apparently also got all sorts of other issues. Rotator cuff injury, purposeful rotator cuff injury that's not recovered completely yet and probably never will be. This is not a person that you cut the cast off of and just say, voila, here she is, she's back in it. No, it doesn't work. And it was really, it really didn't work. Now, Murphy is Murphy. At certain points, she does some pretty badass stuff, and that's what Murphy does. But no, you don't just go from cured. And they even make the point of saying that. She talks to Dresden about it. He says, not unless you're willing to make some sort of Faustian bargain. If you're not willing to make a Faustian bargain, you don't get all this stuff back. You just have to heal normally. And she just says, we ain't doing that, right? It's the right answer, but it means that when later on she's fairly normal, what the heck? I mean, we're going to find out that Murphy has magic too somehow? I don't think so. She's been a norm too long for that. So I think it's a flaw. And all these things kind of added up. Most upsetting to me was the McCoy thing. But it was just a whole bunch of this, right? Large part of the problem is this. The setup. Now, if he'd have done what he does in a lot of books, if Butcher had done what he'd done in a lot of books and had had Harry and one or two major characters beside Harry playing, I think that this would have worked a lot better. It really needed, whoever his editor is, really needed to work with him on this. It needed to be narrowed down a lot. And if it'd done that, and they'd have gone into the peace talks, and those 2 or 3 people had been there with him, rather than it's a semi-ensemble thing, right? There's so many different people that are touched with Dresden and here and there and doing that. It's just like, okay, I'm going to do all sorts of fan service, and everybody's going to be here who are all fan favorites. Heck, he even talks about Tilly, which, the FBI agent who I actually would like to see Tilly come in and be somebody who works with Dresden. I think it'd be a really appropriate to the power levels and that we're dealing with Dresden now, that somebody from the federal government would be working with him. And it would be, he's an interesting character that could be out there and do something really well. I don't know if we're ever going to see that, but then, but we get everybody. I mean, we get Goodman Gray, Murphy, Butters, the Russian Knight of the Cross. We get, just everything. Thomas, Ebenezer McCoy, pretty much everybody in the Council of Wizards that we're looking at. We get Odin in again. We get the dragon that was in one of the earlier books. They're all there. Now, some of that semi makes sense at the peace talks, but a lot of it doesn't. He just put too much in here together, and doesn't hold together very well. It needed to be narrowed down. Okay, now that's one part of some of the problems. A big problem here is he just bypassed what could have been an amazing setup for the books. We could have had all sorts of political intrigue going on here as they all have these peace talks, none of them acting in good faith, because of course none of them would be acting in good faith, but all of them kind of holding together, and Mab being the referee that's keeping everybody in line and trying to figure out what's going on and all this sort of stuff. Could have been a really interesting situation. You could have wrote a whole book about them doing this and all the intrigues in the background and all sorts of stuff and how they're all trying to backstab each other. It was a really good setup. Unfortunately, it gets totally ignored. I mean, all it turns out, the peace talks, is just the Fomor declaring war on the world, right? They declare war on the world. They declare war on the on all the signers of the Encelian Accords. That's it. Nothing. None of the intrigue that could have taken place. Nothing. I mean, of course, we get the rescue story, but you know, that felt kind of glommed on too. I'm not sure if that's going to play out more in the second book. I imagine it is. There's got to be something going on there. Obviously, with Thomas trying to say Justine or something to Harry that just assuming it's Justine. There's something going on there beyond what we understand at the moment, and I expect that to play out in book 2. We'll see. We'll have to see. Um, lots and lots and lots of potential there that just went. Fomor just show up, kill some of Johnny Marcone's people, kill a lot of Johnny Marcone's people, and then they, pay Weregild to that, declare that basically declare that they're at war with humanity, and that they're going to make all the other supernaturals go to war with humanity or go to war with them, and then they march off, and leave the situation as it is after they do a hex that blows out, several miles worth of electrical stuff with, everything. Just like we all see with hexes, magic blows out things. Except it shouldn't work that way with the Fomor, because the Fomor are naturally magical, right? Or at least the one that did this was. If it had been wizards going boom and sending out their hexes and blowing everything out, that would have made sense. But the Fomor doing it boom, they're not really like they're naturally magical, and as has been pointed out, particularly when they showed Molly in one of the books using a cell phone, when you're naturally magical, you don't affect scientific matters, don't affect technology. But that's the Fomor could have done it. Could have been a spell from the Fomor doing it on purpose, right? So okay, that's there. And then we basically get to the end. Thomas is saved. There's a little bit of drama out at the island because Thomas's sister gets upset over what Harry does to save Thomas. Right? Something has to be done because of what's going on with Thomas. Harry does it, and the sister ain't happy about it for obvious reasons. And that's it. We're kind of just left there. There's all sorts of unresolved things here, and it's not like prior books. Jim Butcher has been really good in prior books of going, okay, story here goes start, up, down, up, finish, right? I mean, and they're tight books and they're well written, and when you get in your book, you get a solid story, even though it's part of an ongoing arc. This one's not that. We don't get, one overcome thing, end of story, end of story wrapped up, right? We don't get that. What we get is just kind of a whole bunch of uneven, side stories, things that don't really apply or don't work out in this one. As I said, probably artifacts from it being 2 books at one point. And at the end, we're kind of left unsatisfied. We're set up in a situation where, okay, we're all going to war with the Fomor, which basically they were at war with the Fomor anyway. It's been upgraded, accelerated, however you want to put it. And the Fomor have made it a really bad situation for the rest of the Supernaturals. Ta-da! That's your end of the story. We haven't resolved Ebenezer McCoy going nuts, contrary to his personality. We haven't resolved whatever's going on with Justine. We haven't really resolved Thomas. We haven't resolved all sorts of things. It's not like a normal Terry Dresden book where you get an ending. This is frustrating. I am disappointed in this book, obviously disappointed. It could really be salvaged in the next book, though, and I'm looking forward to that. As I know that it probably would have been 700 or 800 pages if they hadn't split it in half. But if it is as I suspect it is, it probably should have been that one book, right? And if they weren't going to do that, they should have gone back, and he should have gone back and done a serious rewrite of this first book, which I suspect that after 5 years, his publishers were like, no, we're going to publish this, flaws and all. We're going to get it out there before all your fans, just forget who you are. So they got it out. It's flawed. It could be hugely saved in the next book, and I really look forward to seeing that. And I actually kind of have to recommend, if you're watching this later, read them both together. If the second book's come out by the time you see this video, get them at the same time and read them together, because I suspect that's going to make it a much better experience. That's it for what I've got to say about it. It's not bad. There's a little bit too much fan service in it. It's just kind of seems like filler to get you from point A to point B, and hopefully point B, being in the second book of this, is going to really pay off, right? But this is not anywhere near his best book. Butcher still is a pretty good writer. Well, not pretty good. Butcher's still a really good writer. Starts a little rough here, and once he gets back into the flow, it goes okay. It's just not great. That's it for today, folks. If you got any comments, you put them down there. I know I'm going to get plenty of "you're an idiot" comments on this. It's the way it happens in these sort of things. If you like anything you saw here, you can hit the subscribe button. I don't guarantee I'll be doing too many of these, but I do a bunch of things on this channel. Some of my legal stuff, some of the von Buchenstein stuff, some of whatever. Used to do disc golf here. But you can, subscribe here, and maybe you'll see something interesting occasionally. You can go over to Minor League Matters, my other blog or my other vlog, and I think you'll see more interesting stuff there. But enough for that plug. Subscribe, hit the bell, etc., etc. If you want to get a hold of me on Twitter and direct message me and tell me how dumb I am, it's LammersK, or at twitter.com. You're welcome to tell me everything you want to tell me about myself. Until next time, folks, go read a good book. Go watch a good film. Go have some fun. Ma salama, y'all.